There's nothing worse than trying to list an item on the auction house and then you realise once it's sold, you didn't actually list it for the correct price. Now, a lot of the time that is simply because you're looking at the lowest bid for an item and simply fail to realise that it had other items on that make the item way more expensive than you actually sold it for. Now, in other cases, when listing an item on the AH, you may simply accidentally, instead of put a B, put an M. So instead of billion, you put a million, or instead of million, you put K. Because, if you sell a lot of items on the AH, you can quite easily probably get mixed up. It's happened to me a lot of times, and a lot of the time, yeah, you're going to lose a lot of money. It's one of those things where once it's sold, it's sold. But, of course, not long ago, Hypixel introduced basically a grace period for items that are listed on the AH, a period of about 20 to 30 seconds where you can see the item on your AH, but nobody else can actually purchase it. This is, of course, great when you're selling all items on the AH, just means that you've got an extra, basically, barrier of security, so when you list an item, you can check it once it's listed to double, triple, or quadruple check that you've listed it for the correct price, and if you've not, you can take it down, and sure, you might lose some fees, but there's no harm done. You might be wondering where I'm going with all of this, but let me explain. Now, a mistake like I've just explained is probably more commonly going to happen to maybe a player with less experience. Somebody who maybe hasn't played the game a lot, maybe who hasn't progressed through the game a lot, and maybe doesn't have a lot of playtime. The more you play the game, the more accustomed you're going to get with prices and mechanics in the game and so on. Now, this page was brought to my attention. It's basically just the sale history for the Celadon die. In the past 3 months, this die has sold 3 times, once for 10 billion coins, and somehow twice for 500. Now, I initially thought that there was some huge scam going on, because a couple of months back, and it's probably still going on now, there was a group of people that were basically going around running a really elaborate scam, which made people sell items for really cheap. Basically, they would tell the victim that they want to troll AH flippers, and they would basically want them to list a really expensive item for really cheap on the AH, and then basically before the grace period ends, take it down. So people will be able to see it but not be able to buy it. The scammer would invite them to the party and basically just continuously walk them to their island, where they've basically got a contraption where you can't open any menus. They can try and quit the game and log back on, but they'll be warped straight back by the scammer. Basically, the scammer then just buys the item. But I've done a little bit of digging into these 2 sales, and they just don't make any sense. So for a little bit more context for maybe some people who don't know, the Celadon die is incredibly rare. It's a 1 in 20 million drop chance from a large sludge, or a 1 in 1 billion drop chance from a medium or small sludge. Now, of course, these can be found in the crystal hollows. A ridiculously rare item, and for somebody who may be not too experienced in the game and has just really luckily dropped one, it may not really be very clear as to how much the item is actually worth. So how is it that the last 3 sales of this die have both been for 500 coins, with the exception of one for 10 billion? They seem unrelated, the buys and sells are different. It just seems strange. How could this be? Well, let's try to uncover what has actually happened. But before we do, if you are planning on purchasing anything from the Hypixel store, make sure to use code NITROS, it gets yourself 5% off. You should subscribe to the channel. If you watch the videos and you haven't subscribed, please make sure to do so. You should join the Discord server, its links in the description of this video. We offer slaves and dungeon carries, so if you need carries or want to carry and make some coins, make sure to join. I've been investigating a few different avenues for the past maybe half an hour. It's still a little bit convoluted, but let's try and see what's happened. We'll start with this one here 3 months ago. So the auctioneer, so the person who has sold the die for 500 coins, is somebody who goes by the name by 2B3, and then the person who actually bought the item is somebody called I Like Thunder. Now, the first place I usually like to start when something like this happens is with the person who's bought it auction history, because sometimes if there's other questionable things on there, it can kind of point to what's happened. And it's strange, because if we look at the bids, they bought a Terminator for 1.5 million coins. Now, the only thing I can assume here is that maybe someone has meant to put 1.5 billion, considering it looks to have master stars of some description and probably could be a relatively max Terminator. They also managed to buy a Hyperion for 270 million coins. And apart from buying the die for 500 coins, honestly, there's not really anything else that looks out of place. So they got a Terminator for like 1.5 mil, Hyperion for 270 mil, and a Celadon die for 500 coins. To be honest, looking at the rest of their profile, I would assume they're just probably a very lucky AH flipper. They have an 11.2 billion net worth and they're Skyblock level 55. And yeah, the proof is in the pudding. They've made a lot of money from the AH. And as for the person who sold the die for 500 coins, once again, nothing really looks out of place. They have a 3 bill net worth and most of that is in coins. Skyblock level 31. And once again, they really look like an auction house flipper. Like, what level 31 has spent 84 million coins on the auction house and gained 95? Not many. Especially when you consider majority of the items that they've been flipping they can't use, so it's definitely not for their own use, it's to flip. Which just seems even more strange, because surely you'd think somebody who's an AH flipper would double, triple and quadruple check the items that they're listing. I don't know. I just don't know what's going on. We'll put that on hold for the moment, and we'll move on to the most recent Celadon die that's been sold around about a month ago for 500 coins again. This time the person who sold the die was Sigma Director, and the person who bought it was R3R0. So yeah, let's take a look. And honestly, there's literally nothing that I've looked at, and I've looked at this pretty extensively, that is out of place, except the Celadon die for 500 coins that they somehow managed to buy. Yeah, the person who bought it has a 3.5 mil net worth, Skyblock level 42, and from looking at their AH, I didn't really think they were a flipper, and I still think they are. They've spent 11 bill and earned 6.9, or maybe they are and they just spent some of their earnings on something expensive, I don't know. But pretty much all of the net worth is in the purse, so that's interesting. But it's almost as if they just got this Celadon die and stopped all operations. I don't know, it's just difficult to really know what's going on. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah, they have a 1.3 bill net worth, the Skyblock level 100. They also potentially appear to be an AH flipper. I mean, they've spent 32 bill and earned 38, which honestly just makes it like more confusing, as like you'd think an AH flipper once again probably wouldn't end up, you know, there's nothing else out of place on the history, but other than the sale of a die for 500 coins, it just seems strange. I just don't know why. I don't know. I really don't know. Now, I said before that I think it could have been a scam, and I really don't think it is, or at least I don't think it's the scam that I was thinking of. I'm taking a look at like the auction houses, because usually you'd expect the person who's ended up like orchestrated the scam, who's actually bought the item, to have basically a lot of auction house history where they've showed the person who they're scamming that, look, you can list a really expensive item and nobody can buy it and they can take it down. So they'll have loads of auctions that are created that have never been fulfilled because they've taken them down before anyone could buy them. Well, that's just simply not the case for either of these items that have been sold. Now, conveniently, both people who have actually bought the items don't have their APIs on, so it's difficult to tell if they actually still have the dies or not. They're not on the AH history, however, for items that are really expensive like this, it's not uncommon for people to sell them through trade menus rather than on the auction house because, well, taxes and fees, and a lot of wasted time. But this is interesting, isn't it? This is very interesting because the I Like Thunder person is in the same co-op as the R3RO, and I Like Thunder is the same person who bought the other die that we were talking about from the 2B3 guy. Huh. I mean, the island doesn't look sus, it just looks like a normal island. It is probably worth taking a look at the co-op's auction house history to see if there's anything else interesting. Maybe these are just auction house flippers, you know. But the fact that the same co-op has managed to pick up 2 like multi-billion coin dies for 500 coins is just crazy. I mean, this is pretty interesting. Picked up a sugarcane hoe for 20 coins, another one for 6k, 165 coins, 240 coins, 1.6k, carrot hoe for 3k, wheat hoe for 165 coins, carrot hoe for 1 coin. How does this even happen? Like, look, it just keeps going and going and going and make it make sense. Also, a jaded Divan's chestplate for 900k. They bought a Flower of Truth for 1 billion coins. Okay, that's interesting. They also bought a load of Hyperions all of a sudden, and Valkyries, and okay, like so many Hyperions, like a crazy amount of Hyperions, like it keeps going. So in the space of 1 month, they bought 21 Hyperions or Necron Blade variants. Something's going on. I'm sorry, but something has got to be going on. None of this makes any sense. Okay, so let's see. There's a few failed attempts to sell Hyperions. They've listed multiple Hyperions here, 2 Hyperions for 1 million coins, and then taken it down, so obviously no one's bought them. That kind of, to me, looks like the scam that I was describing before, but they haven't really done it that many times, so it's just really weird. They ended up selling 7 Hyperions, which makes sense because they bought 21, and they also, for some reason, sold a ton of sticks for 1 coin. I just don't know why, though. Like, this is all the same day. Again, here, this kind of looks like the scam that I was describing before, but they're not doing it very often. They did end up flipping majority of the Hyperions that they bought. Sticks again, though. It's just, I mean, they're obviously a big-time AH flipper, but there's just a few sus things that just don't make sense at all. Having said this, if I would have just taken a look at this auction house history, and not associated them with the weird co-op that has somehow managed to buy 2 identical dies on separate occasions for 500 coins, even though they're worth billions of coins, yeah, I'd probably just wouldn't think anything of it. And the last person on the co-op with their IGN of not a Koffel macroer. For context, the website that I'm using right here to check auction house history is Koffelnet, and this has like almost like a built-in AH flipper on the website. As far as I'm aware, basically it gives you flips, and you can just basically copy and paste like a code into the game, and it will bring up the item straight away that is thought to be a flip. You can pay a subscription to get these like links quicker, so you can basically be the first people to basically get the good flips. Of course, you can just use it for normal purposes as well, just as search in the AH. It's allowed. It's not against the rules, as far as I'm aware. Like, you can sit like, it is basically just a website that tells you flips. It takes, I guess, the lowest bid on the auction house with the like the attributes and enchantments on an item, and compares it and sees if it's a flip. If it's a flip, it flags as a flip. It's pretty simple. But yeah, it just is a bit questionable with the name. So they managed to buy a Terminator for 1.4 mil, a Dark Claymore for 37.9 mil. Like, I know it's not a crazy flip, but an aspect to the end for 40k. Yeah, it's just a massive AH flipping operation, like you can clearly tell. The profile in game, they have 192 mil net worth, and they're Skyblock level 42. They've, interestingly enough, spent 18 billion on the AH and earned 12 billion. Now, once again, they all have their APIs off, so that might not be the true net worth, and it's kind of hard to see really anything. Now, sure, it does. This corp seems a little bit sus. Number one of them is called Not a Koffel Macro. I mean, that's kind of alarm bells, but that doesn't really mean that could just be a joke, and it probably is most likely intended to be a joke anyway, even if you were. Not only that, all 4 people have their APIs off. A lot of them seem to have got really, really good flips, like Terminators and Hyperions for really cheap. What are the odds that 2 people out of the same corp of 4 manage to snipe a Celadon die for 500 coins on separate occasions? It is pretty unlikely that's going to happen. Like, it's incredibly unlikely that you'd even win 1. It's incredibly unlikely that you're even on at the time and checking at the time to even see 1, let alone win it. But then for 2 of you in the same co-op to win 1 is just crazy. Now, sure, it could happen, it's just very unlikely. So, sure, that might somewhat account for the people who ended up winning the items, but how did those 2 unsuspecting souls end up selling Celadon dies for 500 coins? Now, I can understand if you miss a 0 off something, but there's no way they were trying to sell the die for 5,000 coins. I can understand if you miss a K or an M or a B off the end of it, but even then, none of it would make sense. 500 billion's too expensive, 500 mil's too cheap, and 500k's too cheap. I wonder if they know how big of a mistake they've really made, and to be honest, if they don't, it's probably better that way. Anyway, let me know what you think is going on here in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.